Good day, good day. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jay, and this is Homeschool Yo Kids podcast. Before we get started, make sure you check out our expo schedule on homeschoolyourkidsexpo.com. We have some really great locations that we are hitting up this year, and we couldn't be more excited. Miami was a blast. Hampton has been beautiful. So we just expect all great things this traveling season, definitely. Also, big shout out to some of our proud sponsors who want to ensure that you have a village surrounding you and you are supported in all that you do. So definitely check out Classical Conversations and Base Camp Ed. I don't have my book in front of me, y'all, but Base Camp Ed. Both are very community driven and want to ensure that this is not a journey you take alone. So find your tribe. All right. And so today we have us, Kristen. Kristen is also another one of our proud sponsors with Sex Ed Reclaim. And I just can't believe like, that I don't know. Go ahead, introduce yourself, Kristen. Go ahead.
My name is Kristen Miele. I own Sex Ed Reclaimed, which is a 2-year-old business, so it's quite young, but I've been a sex educator for 15 years. I do speak at homeschooling conferences. So I just found out about Homeschool Yo Kids in the past year or so. Well, the last like 6 months. So that is why I got involved and how I got involved. But I created a curriculum that is a full digital library for families to use right at home, school, or church. They can play my video curriculum for their kids at an age appropriate level. So there's actually curriculum for 3 to 6 year olds, 7 to 10 year olds, 11 to 13 year olds, and 14 to 18 year olds. And this is based on my experience teaching thousands and thousands of kids. And really, I wanted families to have access to my education for children right at home. So you actually play it for your kids, and it comes with workbooks and grading rubrics for homeschoolers, and it comes with tips and tricks on how to talk to your kids about difficult topics. But primarily, it really is for the kids to learn about this topic.
Yes, I love that. So you taught sex ed previously
Yes.
in schools,
hmm
in public schools?
Yeah, I've taught all over. I studied public health. I got my master's in public health. And while I was getting my master's, I was teaching college students human sexuality. And that's really where my love for it began because I was originally very, very uncomfortable with the topic. I was not raised in a family that discussed this item, discussed this topic at all. And so when I was assigned to teach human sexuality, I was terrified. But I actually learned after about a semester of teaching that it was really so important. Like these were college students, so they're smart kids. They've made it into a Big Ten university, and yet they still don't know very much about this topic, and yet they're out there doing it. And so it was just really eye-opening for me to want to be in this space. And I continued in this space and I did some other things in public health, but I went on the mission field as well. I lived abroad. And I wasn't planning on doing sex ed there, but people found out I was a sex educator. And it was a primarily Catholic country, and they were like, we don't know anything. Like we are
Oh,
taught from a very religious background to the point that we're really not taught much at all. And that sucks, right? That just sucks. So they were grown women, grown adults who asked me to teach classes, who had kids, weren't sure about their own bodies. I taught kids K through 12, but I've been in hundreds and hundreds of schools. I've taught primarily in public schools who requested that I come in to speak because otherwise you have like that awkward gym teacher or nurse who's trying to teach the class and the kids are just super uncomfortable and it's not effective. And so I would come in and teach for a week. So I was in about 60 schools, but then I was overseas and I've been in church settings, like I have been foster care settings all over the place. So
oh, that is amazing. What did you do with that week? Like what
sure.
topics were you sure to cover in that week?
Good question. So the first day was basically an introduction to the topic in that it was getting comfortable and starting to get engaged, and we began to introduce anatomy. The second day, we would complete anatomy and start to talk about puberty and go through what depending on the age group, whatever would be applicable to that age group in regards to puberty. And then we usually did a day on consent, respect, and communication. I did a day on sexually transmitted infections. What is the disease outlook in this country? How do people get them? And then I also did a day on pregnancy and birth control. So that was, and not all schools wanted all 5 components, but many schools wanted at least 3 to 4 of them, if not all. So that was my week. And basically what I've done with Sex Ed Reclaimed is I've replicated that, but on a much bigger scale. Initially, I thought, oh, I'll just film those 5 lessons that I used to teach and put them online for families to access. But I actually have almost 100 lessons now on Sex Ed Reclaimed because as you know, and as your listeners know, there's so much to talk about in this field. Like there's just so much to cover. And particularly when you splice it out into age appropriate conversations, it becomes like really big. And so that's why I ended up filming almost 100 videos because different kids have different needs depending on their age. But then there's also so many topics to discuss with children.
Indeed, indeed. I like how you said earlier that college students, even though they're in college, well, rounded individuals, they're doing something that they don't really know about. Like, it's like, where do we find that information? Because I think back to when I talked to my mom about sex, it wasn't on a sense of sex. I told her that I wanted to start birth control to help my acne.
Right.
That was me saying, look,
Yeah.
I'm thinking about doing
Right.
this.
Right. Right.
So, like, that's
Yeah.
how I go about,
Yeah.
so it
But isn't
wasn't. Hmm.
But sorry, isn't that interesting too that like you didn't want to be honest with her? Like there was something that you
Hmm.
knew you were going to hear an earful or you were going to get judged, shamed, yelled at, in trouble, whatever. And so many of us learned that growing up. And it's a funny story now, but when you think about you, little teenage you in that moment, just like how can I get access to this? Because I know I need it, but I don't know how to get it other than pretending that it's because my acne. Like that was smart to get it, but it was also dishonest as we recognize.
Right?
And it's like, I really want to foster that connection of honesty and authenticity, truth between parent and children.
Yes.
And it is possible with this topic. Kids don't have to grow up afraid to talk about this or uncomfortable or like lying to try to get around. I mean, we can't control our kids, like things happen, but
Hmm.
which is hard. But like in general, I want to foster a healthy, safe space for kids to talk to their parents.
Yes, no, and it's much needed because, like you see, my mom was a teenage mother and she had her first child at 16. So, if anything, that's the only thing she was focused on was prevention. So, everything else is just like we didn't talk about. We didn't talk about nothing about the parts of our bodies, about anything. Even with this, when I started my cycle, it was just like, oh, you're a woman now, like, and then it was like, okay, what does that even mean? Like,
Right.
what does that
What
even
was I
mean?
before? Yeah.
I know. Right? And so I don't, yeah, it was not a comfortable or it wasn't made to be comfortable discussion in our household.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And that's what most people grew up with. That's what my generation, like the whole millennial generation grew up with was discomfort, more or less, around this topic. And so now they're parenting and they're like, wait, I know I need to. I know I missed out on this. I know that there's all this stuff happening in the world right now, plus total access to porn. Like, how am I supposed to even do this? And so that's really where like my curriculum meets that gap because there is a gap in our sex ed. The culture, the world, pornography is doing it. They're the ones educating our kids. And we all know that's not great. And we want to step in. But if we don't have the language, then how do we do it? And so that is really why I created this curriculum for kids to actually have the language and to feel safe and engaged and empowered to really own their own body and be in charge of it in a way that some of us didn't feel like we could have when we were kids.
Indeed. And I feel like parents like sleep on the fact of the things that their kids already know. I think, we think like, oh, okay, that's the conversation we'll have when they're teenagers or something. That's something like, oh, the birds and the bees talks. Like, oh, have you talked about? Yeah, yeah, no. I've shared this before because it happened a while ago, but they are what, 11 and 8 now? But when they were, I think probably 8 and 5, um, they were playing with a friend and they were playing dolls. And she had her doll the head by the doll's private parts. And my girls was telling me, like, she like this is what she was doing and stuff. And so I'm having a conversation about sex with the 5 and 8 year old at that time. And that was just
Right.
then. Then later on, I think probably later that year or maybe the next year that followed, so that 6 and 9 at this time, we had went to the park and they get back in the car and my oldest is like, Mom, what is the white stuff that comes out of a boy's penis? And I said, wait, what?
Mhm.
What? And
Right.
I'm so glad that I'm facing forward because I'm like,
Yeah. Right.
oh my gosh. But then I had to talk about that and like and I had the conversation. And so now the girls and reaction is everything, I think, when those questions come to you, because it's like you don't want to shame them, you don't want to make them feel like they said something wrong or anything. It's just like pretty alarming. So of course, me and my little monotones, like, well, this is this and this is that. And how about my lovely 6-year-old said, so that, like, after my little brief overview, she said, "So dad squirted in you twice?" I said, "Wait a minute.
Oh my gosh.
How
Yeah.
did you gather that?" Like, oh my
Yeah.
God.
It did the math. Yeah.
Yes, but I freaked out later, like talking to my friends, like recapping, like, oh my gosh, like this is what they said. But when talking to them, I remained calm and
Mhm.
answered the questions and things to the best of my ability, as
Right.
clear and cut as I could with facts, as opposed to like, some may, oh, there's a stork that comes and brings,
Right.
all that stuff. So,
Yeah, that's good. I mean, if I can commend you on that, I will say you highlight a few things just in that. So, one, the car, actually, you were in the car, you were leaving the park, or you were facing forward, walking, whatever. If that is a great place to have those conversations because you don't have to make eye contact, particularly with
right,
boys. Like if you can have conversations in the car, go for it. If there's a song on the radio that just had sexually explicit lyrics, you're not sure if they know what it means. You think, they probably don't, but I'm really not sure. Ask them, what do you think about the song? What do you think they're talking about? Why do you think she's so upset about her boyfriend? Or what do you think that phrase meant? Right? Like, don't be afraid to be engaging with them on this topic because they're already hearing it and people are already speaking into it, probably kids at the park or wherever, cousins, neighbors, etc. And you want to be the voice that they hear when it comes to these answers and these questions that they have. You want to be the one who is able to respond. And so that's great. And like you said, your body language is key. So for example, if somebody, let's say your kid comes home and says, "What's 69ing?" and you're mortified, like, what in the world, right? But instead you just say, so there's a couple things you could say. You could say, "What? Where did you hear that?
okay,
Wait, who told you that? Wait, what?" Like, and that immediately shows the kid, I need to shut down. This is really
right.
bad. I don't need to ask them this. I did something wrong. I'm wrong. I'm bad. Right. So, not good things. Or you can say, "Huh, that's an interesting question," as you hold in all your emotion, right? Where did you hear that? Or what did you hear about that? So, you always want to start with, if possible, if you can recall this, what did you hear about that? Or where did you hear about that? Or what do you mean? Some sort of version of what do you mean? Because, for example, a mom told me recently that her son in the back seat of the car said, "Mom, what's a booby?" And she, instead of being like, "Where'd you hear that? What, that's a slang term. It's actually called the breast, da da da." Like this women, going on along. She just said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, what's a booby trap?" And so clearly he had learned something about booby traps. That would have been a completely different answer than
What? That was
boobies. Yes. And so just saying, "What do you mean?" Or I have a
yeah.
story of a dad who heard their 8-year-old. So you mentioned 8. Their 8-year-old said, "What is sex?" And instead of like asking, "What do you mean?" or "Where'd you hear that?" he launched into a full explanation of penetrative sex with his 8-year-old, which I actually generally don't think is necessary, especially if they're not asking it. Well, it turns out the kid was trying to fill out a form where they had to circle male or female. And so it said, "What's your
Oh,
sex?" And they just had to circle M or F, but they didn't know what that meant. So again, completely different conversation. So you do want to start with, "What do you mean?" or "Where'd you hear that?" or like, "Oh, white stuff coming out of the penis." Like, interesting. Like, what did you hear about it? Or what do you think it
mhm.
is? And that can really show you where they're at too.
Indeed, yes. I'm always, well, what do you know? Like I do that all the time
Yeah.
with any question in general. Just like, okay, what do you know about that? Like, yeah, where did you get that from? Like that's almost like, where did you get that from? Or how did you learn that? But the white stuff in the penis came from a little boy at the park talking about something that he found out about, I don't know, with his sister or something. I don't know. But I know it came from, and my biggest thing is I always want them to bring it back to me. Like I want to be their first teacher in all aspect. And I want them to like feel like I'm a fact checker. Like, like, oh, okay, let me go ask my mom because she'll tell me. Like we were in
Right.
the car with my cousin and Kenny asked something about what a stripper was, and my she was asking my cousin, but my cousin kind of gave her like a runaround answer. And so then she was like,
Oh,
Mom, what's a stripper? And I said, I gave her like da da da. And she's like, oh, okay. Like, it's just like I know people be like, "You just gonna tell them this stuff?" And I'm like,
mhm.
yes, because I need them to I want to know what they know, and I want them to always just bring it back to me. That's the most
Right.
thing. Like, if nothing else, just bring it back and tell me what you've learned. Like, tell me what you've learned.
100%. Like I
Yes,
totally agree because that those questions do are surprising for us as parents, but if you're answering it, then they're not going to other places to ask it, which is clutch. Like you want to be their Google as for as long as you can. And
yes,
that's basically what you're saying. And so it really is important. And the great thing about that too is then just like with homeschooling, you can also share your worldviews, your beliefs, like how does that make you feel? Really get to know them on that level of, well, I learned what a stripper was from like a song in ninth grade or something like that, it was not the best. And so I just think about what an opportunity actually parents have when kids ask this rather than giving them the
yes.
runaround. The other thing is we want to give them the runaround maybe instinctually because we think we're protecting them or that they're too innocent, that they don't need the information. But that if they are asking, that's because they want the information. That's how we're made. Like we ask questions. And so you're not taking away their innocence by describing what a stripper is. You're simply caring for them in that difficult space of questions and curiosities about the world by giving them the truth. And coming from you, that makes a world of difference.
Indeed. I still feel like parents just really underestimate all that their kids already know. Like, especially with this world of social media and the phones and just the things that they see and hear on the regular. And I always give the scenario of think about your child, an elementary child, like fourth, fifth grade, being in the classroom full of 25 other peers, and all of them come in with their phones and it's a fresh Monday day. They've had Friday, Saturday, Sunday to sit at home and discover all this neat stuff on their phone, and they're all just sharing, like, oh, look what I found, look what I found, look what I found. And it's just like, you want to be able to combat that. You want to be able to know, like, hey, so and so showed me this on their phone today, or so and so, because those conversations are being had with or without you.
Yeah, exactly. And that totally happens. That's how it happens is phones, media, like it's all right there. And you can kind of impact your kids, but you don't know what other kids are being impacted by and then what they'll share to your kids. So you want them to go back to you and say, "Hey mom, I heard this. So and so told me this. What does that mean?" Right? Instead of just looking on phones for more information, which is not the place to go for this kind of information.
Right. And then now we're in a time and space where kids are sending pictures of themselves. I shared like my seventh grader. I used to teach. She sent out nudes of herself, and she almost got charged with child pornography, not understanding that's what she had. That's what she was doing essentially. So that's when I'm just like, these conversations are so important. That's why I told you when I emailed you this, I'm excited about this because I feel like parents need that encouragement of it's okay. Like, you can have this talk. This is okay. Like, this is not gonna make or break your conversation. It's not gonna make you look at them any different. It's not anything. It's just gonna make you more aware of what is going on in their heads already, or what they're already experiencing or seeing.
Yes, and even if your kid isn't, one of their closest friends might be, your niece or nephew might be. You want to be the parent who they can come to with these questions and ask, like, "Hey, so and so, I heard so and so sent a nude," and like, isn't that really bad? Like, what does that mean for her? And it's like, oh, well, now maybe you have an opening to talk to that parent and be like, hey, just so you know, this isn't a tattletale thing, but this is a protecting your kid thing of, hey, it's really common. It does happen, but like, you should be aware that this is going on. And kids find ways to do the things that they're interested in doing. But the main thing is that you're educating them and having these conversations with them so they really go in with their eyes wide open. Like, grooming and sexting and sextortion.
Right.
Those are all topics I talk about in my curriculum. And you think, well, why would you talk about that with kids? Well, because they're the star of that. They're the ones who are sexting and being sextorted and leading to really sad ends. Like like suicide, and they're the ones
Oh,
who are groomed. And so that's why my curriculum starts at age 3. I start to talk to
I
kids
know, and I
about,
heard that. Yes.
right. I start to talk to kids about what their body parts are called. This is your vagina, this is your penis. That way there's no shame, there's no confusion, there's no like, there are really sad stories of abuse that go on, and the kids don't know how to name the abuse because they still call their vagina their pocketbook. Like it's not
Or
okay. And that,
cookies. Your
yes. And
cookie. Yes,
mhm,
I've heard that
ate a
before.
cookie, or he ate my cookie, and it's like, okay, whatever, right? That doesn't mean anything, but it does if it's your vagina. And so actually teaching
Yes.
kids the appropriate names, because there's no shame. They don't have that shame around strippers or the topic of abortion. I had a mom once say, my 8-year-old's asking about abortion. I don't want to explain that to her. And I said, why? She said, because it's so heavy. And I said, not to your 8-year-old. Your 8-year-old doesn't have any idea what it is. She's not going to inherit all of that heaviness and darkness and political atmosphere. She's just asking what abortion is. Like whatever you're carrying, right? You need to let go of that a little bit as you simply educate her on what it is. And yeah, talk about your family's response to that or whatever. That's fine. But she's not carrying all that heavy stuff. And you're not putting that on her when you simply answer the question for her. And so parents refrain from using correct anatomical terms or talking about heavy topics because of their own shame and learned shame, not because of that's the right thing to do for the child, right? You need to actually educate the child in that moment. So yeah, I start with little kids just to protect them and keep them safe.
Yes, very much needed, especially with this time. It's like like, especially talking about predators in general, it's like you said, parents feel like, oh, I'm preserving their innocence by not talking about this. But it's like at the same time, are you? Because they still have to go out, especially we're talking about families that are, their kids are going into the classroom. You're seeing what's going on as far as these teachers being reported more and more as far as having a relationship with their teenage students and even some as young as 8 and 12. Like there's been some crazy headlines that have been coming out. So it's like if you're sending your child out into this atmosphere without any knowledge of the grooming or the
Right.
sex talk that is happening, you kind of setting them up.
Mhm. Exactly. Now they're up the creek without a paddle. Like that's what my mom used to say all the time. Literally, like how are they going to get anywhere? Because they don't have the tools. They don't have, if you think of it almost like a battle, like these are the people who are like you would battle for your kids, with your kids. You would fight for them, right? Every mom would say that. But what about in this? What about in this? What tools are you giving them? What weapons are you giving them to fight this? To be able to say, oh, that person is asking me for a nude picture because I'm in love with them and we're 13 and dating, but I'm not going to do that because I don't know what he's going to do with that picture. I don't know where they're going to send it. I don't know how many school friends or, co-op friends of mine are going to see this. I could be arrested for child pornography. Like that is a kid who's armed and ready to go. And even though they're tempted to send that picture of themselves because they're interested in this other person or whatever, they know it's actually a really big deal to do that and could really hurt them. And so they don't. And that's a kid who's ready.
So what were some of the most common questions that you received in with you teaching this in the classroom? Like some of the things that the kids were asking that you heard a lot.
Well, I actually don't have a most common question because I get such a myriad of questions all over the
Mm,
place. Like I have a lot of crazy questions I've been asked. I have a lot of maybe what you would say is normal questions that have been asked of me about their body and how it works. But I don't have a most common because it's all over. Kids have questions about everything. And so it's great to be able to answer. And actually, the great thing about having someone else do a little bit of your kid's sex ed, even like especially while you're
mm,
present, like you know what's going on, is that it just reinforces your message. Like it's not just something that mom tells me or just something that dad tells me or my aunt or my grand. It's something that, oh, this sex ed teacher is saying too. Like she's saying this is risky too, or she's saying that this is unsafe too, or she's saying that this is sex is not a way to get love either. Like it just
mhm,
reinforces basically the truth when multiple people are telling them that same thing without any shame or judgment or legalism, like you have to do this to get this. It's more of an open messaging of, hey, this is the reality that we're living in, and this is how I want you to be safe and protected and healthy, like have healthy dating relationships, etc. And
yeah.
so it reinforces your messaging, which is great. But I mean, I really don't, I can't even think of a most common question because I have just been asked everything under the sun.
Everything. Yeah, I can
Yes,
imagine. I can only
truly.
imagine because I just got these two little people here, and just the things that I tell them, the things that they come back to me with, it's just like, okay, okay,
Right,
okay, this is where we are.
yeah,
Okay, like,
right.
honey, yeah,
Yeah. But you're changing the culture for your kids. Like that's
yeah,
not something you had, right? Your mom was
yes,
solely focused on, I don't want my teenager to have a baby like I did
and
because
that
I
was
was
it.
too young. That was it because that was her experience, which understandable. We're not sitting here to blame her and whatnot, or my parents, etc. Sitting to blame any parents or any generation, but we are thinking about how can we do this a bit better and how can we do
Yes.
this for our such a time as this, like this moment, right? And this moment is very sexualized. There's a lot of stuff
Mm.
going on in the world at any
Oh,
given
Kristen,
time,
talk about it,
especially
honey.
yeah, especially with the internet. Like our parents did not see the internet coming. They didn't know what was about to hit us and just even how that would speak into our sex lives. Okay. But it does. It's a huge educator, and whether it's right or not. And so now we have to step up to the plate and say, okay, how are we going to change this for our kids? How are we going to change the culture? What are we going to do differently actively right now, starting today?
Right, because you think about how much the internet evolved. I remember my time in the chat rooms and talking to, I had little boyfriends online and everything else, like, but I don't feel like any of the conversations went too crazy. However, my mom didn't know I was doing that online. Like she
Right.
had no idea, and I wouldn't have brought it to her because she would have, shamed me for it and everything else. So it's just like, oh yeah, no, I just sliding in DMs now. Everybody's sliding in DMs and liking or
Right.
commenting, and the attention that our young people seek during their times of growth is like it's a lot.
Right. And even in my curriculum, I have content on why do I want attention? So that's a normal thing to want attention,
Mm,
right? You want to be loved,
yes.
you want to be known. That's totally normal. So normalizing that. That's normal that you're curious about that. That's normal you're interested in that. That's normal you have questions, right? But here's how you really how your actions are really going to impact your life. So you want attention? Okay, so you post pictures of yourself like in your bikini or whatever with your six pack showing. So what does that do? Right? It gets people interested in my body. Okay, so what does that do? Like play it out, right?
Mm,
Okay, now people are interested in maybe dating me or my body. Okay, what for? Oh, maybe they're interested in doing stuff with me that I'm not ready to. Right. So how could I maybe change what I'm putting out there to send a little bit of a different message? And that's not to say that, whatever if you post something that whatever happens is your fault, but just thinking about playing out, okay, well, what am I really trying to do here, right? I just
yes.
want people to see me. That's normal. Okay, well, how can they see you for good things? Like, how could you
Yes.
serve in your community or love people well or care about people, show empathy, etc. So, really having these more holistic conversations around sex and sexuality than we were shown probably when we were kids, right? But also then you're even aware of. Like it can be more of a full conversation, really getting to know your kid and their worldview and where they're at, what they're struggling with. It's not just the birds and the bees or the talk. It's a far bigger conversation
It
about
really is.
identity, yeah, and being cared for.
Yes, because even with talking, because my 11-year-old, she been crushing on boys since she was probably like good 5, 6 years old. Oh my gosh. And so like we grew into me always asking her, okay, well, what do you like about him? Why do you like him? Like, do you even know
Right.
his name? Like, things like that. And so now when she'll come and tell me, like, there was a young man at the library in Arizona, and she was like, "Yeah, I have a crush on him." Da, da, da. And she's like, "I really feel like he's smart, and he plays an instrument." And like she was listing off things already because she knew that's what was going to come with the question. Like, why? What do you like about him? Why do you like him? And so now it's just like, okay, you're understanding that there has to be value in this whatever partnership, relationship, whatever it is that you're seeking. It has to come with some kind of value. It's not just you out here
Exactly.
crushing on boys because they're cute, you know?
Exactly.
So
That's
yeah.
big.
Yes, yes. It's just so many things to talk about.
There are, but I think we all know like your mom's voice, your dad's voice is the voice that's in your head a little bit, even as a grown adult. And
What?
so if you can do that when they're little and do it about this topic, like that is so great. And it is possible. It's very possible. And I want to help parents understand that that it is and that they can do it. You don't have to be a sex ed teacher. You don't have to be some sort of sexpert, right? You can simply just engage in conversations with your kids based on what they're asking and what they're showing in their life.
Indeed. So, okay, let's talk about sex ed reclaim some more as far as like how it looks for parents. Because I know you say you have the videos, you have the workbooks that go along with it. Is it a set course? Is it like, a 6-week course, 10-week course of something of that sort?
So it is a digital library. It never expires. There's
Okay.
no membership fees. You don't have to pay like annual fees or anything like that. But basically what you do is so, okay, I have an 8 and an 11-year-old. So I would get the 7 to 10-year-old curriculum. And if I think my 11-year-old is also ready, which she or he probably is, right? The 11 to 13-year-old curriculum as well. And then that comes with their own set of videos for that age group that they can watch on their own. They can watch as part of homeschooling. They can watch in like a health co-op that you maybe have, a gym co-op, and there's a calendar which comes with it so you can watch an order of my suggested videos, like this is the order of them, right? Or you can jump around based on their interests, what they're curious about, what you want to show them right now. And so it really is just something you have access to forever that
Mm.
is for their age group, and you can use it as much or as little as you're able to. So it's very flexible. It's not like a course where you have to complete it in a certain amount of time. You can really do it with like I said, some people do it with a co-op, a specific co-op. Others do it, well, we'll do it on Friday at 11 a.m. We do it every other Monday. We're just doing it in November. We're going to do it every day in November, like whatever works for your family. And that way they can watch the videos that connect with that. And so kids can watch it on their own or they can watch it with their parents. It doesn't matter, whatever the family's able to do.
Yes. How long are the videos?
It depends on the age group. So the 3 to 6-year-old, as we know, like a couple minutes, right? Like you have a couple minutes. So each video max, maybe 4 or 5 minutes, and there are activities and questions. So every video has multiple pauses where it says more or less, what do you think about this? What are your thoughts forming around this? It has specific questions for them to journal about or to do in peer groups or to talk about with their parents. So for example, on my healthy dating one, I have scenarios I go over for 11 and up on this boy is texting this girl 1,000 times a day. Well, not 1,000, 100 times a day. She thinks that's too much. She doesn't know how to talk to him about this, but she feels that this might be a good solution. And then there's a pause. What do you think? How could she handle that better? Should they even date? Is this a big problem, etc. Right? And so it gets at kind of what does a healthy relationship look like and what does an unhealthy relationship look like based
Mhm.
on their wants and needs. Because some people might think, that's no big deal. Other people might say, like, that's a lot of contact, right? I don't have time for that. And so every video has engagement questions that where you pause and answer from there. And like I said, there's also a workbook that is available if you want to use that. So it's really meant to engage that age group. Now, when you get to the 14 to 18-year-old, I mean, some of the videos are 25 minutes long. Like there's an STD video where I go over every STD known to man, more or less, that's relevant. And the kids have a chart that they're filling out, but that video is long.
Mhm.
Birth control, probably if you want to talk about birth control your kids, that's probably a 20-minute video because I'm going over all the options. So it gets longer as you get older.
I love that you've created this. Like, parents do need this assistance. Like, definitely, even just to know what it is I should be talking about. Like,
Right,
and
right.
that's what I'm more intrigued on. Like, what do I need to be covering? Because there is this a plethora of stuff to talk about. I think consent is so important. I think the whole dating, like the healthy relationship, because I feel like toxicity is like trending. Like, they people want to be obsessed with each other and all. No, I don't want you obsessed with me. Like, no, like, no, that doesn't sound healthy. Obsession in general doesn't, like, the word itself is a negative connotation. So let's not do that. Okay. But I think that that needs to not only, be modeled for kids, but also be talked about as far as, okay, you're in this relationship now, you're dating, you're 13, 14, you're in your first relationship. What is going on? What are you guys talking about? What interests does he have or she have? Like, just finding out more. I encourage parents to talk to their kids. Like, that's been a message. Like, My 10th and 12th graders used to tell me that I talked to them more than their parents. And that used to be so
Mm,
alarming to me. I'm like, yo, we're not even together that long. And then there's like,
right.
all these other kids in the classroom. So it's just like, how does that look working? How does that work? And so I'm always like, talk to your kids, talk to your kids, talk to your kids. If you don't do anything else, talk to your kids. It's like, because you'd be
And
surprised.
they want to know what you think. Like they
Yeah.
do. They do studies on this, and kids actually want to know what their parents think about stuff, even though parents are like, oh
Mm,
no, she's 14. She doesn't care. No, that's not true. She wants to know. And again, you'll be the voice in her head, whether you feel like she's really even listening or he's listening or
right.
not, right? But like you're saying with dating, I mean, nobody wants to be in an abusive relationship, but people enter them all the time. Well, how do they get there? And so
Yes.
I'm really helping kids to understand, well, what do you do if you hear your friend got hit by her boyfriend or she hit her boyfriend? What do you do about that? Do you tell anybody? Do you talk to them? Do you find out what happened? Like, how do you even with bystanders, like how do you help that friend who is in a bad relationship right now, or that friend who's being pressured to send sext when you know that it could hurt them? How do you help them? And so it's a lot of really communal um empathy as well. Like, how do we help our neighbor, right? How do we care about our friends in a way that, yeah, keeps them out of that abusive relationship and sets them on a bad path for the next however many years. So I really like that part.
Yes, no. It's just so much. Like what Chris said, it's just so much. Like, I'm just like, I don't even know what else. Like, okay, I have so many thoughts going through my head just on my personal experiences, but I was like, I don't want to overtake, like, our conversation with me and my lovely tribe over here but it's so much. It's so much. So much.
Yeah.
Can you speak on the healthy dating more on the consent wise? Because I feel like a lot of times um we send our kid or allow our kids to go out on these dates and then they feel pressured to do things that they just feel like, oh, okay, well, this guy, took me to the movies or he took me to dinner. And we talk about college age students even with the whole date rape where you feel because this guy did this or he provided this that you are obligated to give him something in return, and that's a common thing. I talk to young adults and teenagers about that quite too often, and it's just like they feel pressured or feel like it's an obligation to, I guess, basically do whatever it is that their partner is asking because they did this.
Right. One of the ways I get at that is by talking about standards. So not many 14-year-olds sit down and actually list out what do they want in a boyfriend or girlfriend? What do they really want? And so I have them think about couples, whether they know them personally or they're in the media, but preferably people who they're aware of, like personally, whose relationships they would like to emulate. Like, why do they like them? What makes that relationship so great? What do they want about that? Now think about a relationship you don't want. Somebody you know
Mhm.
who is in a relationship you don't like, whoever it is, why don't you want it? What don't you like about it? What is a red flag to you? And so I do discuss common red flags, but I also discuss red flags that are bothersome to you. Like I said earlier, somebody texting 100 times a day might be nothing to one person, and another person might feel like that's a lot. I have too much going on. I can't respond to you 100 times a day. Well, what do you do then when you're not responding and that person gets frustrated, right? I remember I had a girl once who grew up, she was 18. She came to me and she said, "Thank you for doing what you're doing." And I said, "Oh, sure. Why is it meaningful to you?" She said that she had gotten in a relationship with a boy when she was 14. He was 16. He was a close family friend. So the families were all about this relationship, apparently. And by the time he was 17, he started asking her for pictures. Okay. And she started sending them. She's 15. Well, in the state they were in, that was not, that was illegal. Like the age of consent was, it, it made him essentially, um, uh, I don't know if it was a felon, but certainly he could get in legal trouble. And so he did. And he went to a juvenile detention center for asking for this child pornography. Well, the families were super livid, right? It was really awkward to say the least. He ended up getting out not long after, and they had a restraining order against him so that he couldn't be in a certain amount of space, like all of this stuff. Like it was just super messy. And she just really loved him. She just really loved him. And she sent the pictures because she loved him. And so she was just telling me this, like, my parents were not prepared. I wasn't prepared. It was this whole thing. It ruined our community because we're from a smaller community. Like it was really rough. People blamed me. even though he was the one that asked for pictures and he was several years older than me, like all of this stuff. And I just thought, wow, that sounds really messy, but it could have been pretty easily prevented by conversations around sexting when she was, 14, 13. And so consent is a really big conversation, but it's important to consider, what do you want in a boyfriend? And even if you're with the right guy or the right girl, you really like them, you're really into them, this is right for you. What are some things that would not be good? And how do you say no? So saying no is really difficult for young people and for a lot of people, really. But practicing that, like how to say no. So I have various scenarios where I say, how would you basically like deny this situation? And when we were kids, I feel like we were just taught, okay, somebody comes up to you and says, take a smoke, and you say no. Like it's like so dumb. Like that doesn't really happen. Like what? So my scenarios are very realistic, like very realistic. And I also give them scenarios like this. So let's say, for example, your friend tells you that you can borrow his car. So you go borrow his car, right? And then the next week you show up and you borrow his car again. And then you borrow his car again. Well, he told you you could before. So why can't you now? And it's like, we all kind of know, like, wait a second, no, she can't just borrow the car whenever she wants. Like he told her that one time, right? And so getting at the picture of consent is you
Asking
need
each
every
time.
time. Yes.
Yes.
So giving them other scenarios that aren't even sexual in nature to help them understand, like, this is not okay. Or, oh, he said I could hug him. So then I also grabbed his penis. It's like, well, that's ridiculous. Right. It is. Why? It's disrespectful. It's not loving. You can't just do that to somebody. That could have legal ramifications. So really getting at how do we respect and love and care for each other, and how do we help each other in that, and then how do we have our standards so that when something goes against our standard we say nope, I'm done, no more, right? And I tell them, even like, teenagers might push the limits and that might not end up being who they become as an adult, but that doesn't mean that you have the time for that right now. Like be done with that. You don't need to stay in that relationship even if it's hard to leave, because that's only going to potentially get worse. And so just really being honest and realistic in that. I'm big on authenticity and the truth. And I think that that applies to children. Like they know when you're full of crap
Oh,
or if you're being
yes.
straightforward with them. And so doing that in a way that's just loving, to say, hey, this is how this really plays out. Um, and I care about you, so I don't want that to happen, is really key. But you're right, it's a huge conversation. And
It
it's
is.
never the talk. Like the talk, I always say this, the talk is dead. It is a conversation over the course of their lifetime.
Yes. Yes. Continuously. Definitely.
Mhm.
Continuously. How do you go about addressing porn and masturbation?
Yeah. So I talk a lot about porn because porn is the biggest sex educator that there is. So I look at statistics I mean, there's a ton of science that has come out about the addictive quality of porn, right? I talk about how porn is not real sex. I talk about why it's not real sex, the lack of consent, how many women and men are abused. 80% of porn is violent, how people don't want to be violated during sex. That is never a request of somebody. And so I talk about why that is. And the thing is I actually start talking about porn with 3 to 6 year olds. I call it bad pictures. So like my daughter, when she was 3, she knew, hey, if I ever see a picture of somebody or a video of somebody who's naked, that's not kind, that doesn't love them well. So I need to go tell my mommy. And that doesn't mean I'm in trouble. I just need to go tell her, right? Because little kids can be shown this material. They can see it. It can pop up, especially if your kids have access to tablets, devices. This kind of thing can pop up. So I have an acronym that I work on with the kids, which is basically just to shut your eyes. It's called STOP. So shut your eyes, tell an adult, open your mind to something else you can do, and then play. Like go play. So that's with little kids. But of course, as I get to 11 to 13, 14 to 18, it's porn is called porn. And I really get at the dopamine levels in your brain, how you need more and more and more of it for it to have the same enjoyment. So the addictive quality of it. I personally don't believe there's any porn that's like for people. Like there for a while there, when I was a sex educator, there was conversation about femme porn. Like this porn is all about women and it really cares about women. But the more and more I've dug into that, the more I've seen that women are still abused and hurt in that. And so I just can't stand for it. I don't think it helps a relationship. I don't think it's a good way to learn about sex. And science is coming out backing these opinions. And so I really get at that with the kids of, here's the science, here's what it does to a relationship, here's how it could and does impact many people. and here's how to fight that and how to consider like how it might impact your life. You know, kids who start watching porn, they tend to be lonelier, more depressed, sometimes suicidal. They don't have as many real relationships. They have inappropriate views of what sex is. You know, there's things like choking. Choking a girl has gone up in young teen sex, like
Oh,
14-year-olds
wow. What?
report choking, like this boy just choked me, right? And it's not like they
What?
asked. Yeah. And then anal sex, like unconsented anal sex. Well, I assume she wanted to because that's what all girls want, right? Because that's a huge
What?
porn. And so more and more, and my husband is an internal medicine doctor and pediatrician. And so he sees this even in his office. He
Oh,
sees the effects
man.
of this. Girls say it's on their chart, you know, like, oh, she had this type of sex, but it was unconsented. It was not consented to. And it's like they were having this other type of sex. So they just figured, kind of like you were saying earlier, pressured, well, you're already doing it. We can do that too. Well, a lot of girls don't want to have anal sex, right?
No.
And so they have no ability to communicate and to have that consensual conversation because that is not a part of porn. Porn is never about communication and healthy relationships. It is only about the consumer, the user's orgasm. And so when people become that much of an object, well, then you can use them as an object during sex too. And so I really have that conversation like, how does this translate into the real world? And is there anything helpful about it? Which there's really not. And this is how it ends up harming relationships. So really important to talk about. Most kids, 98% of kids see porn by the time they go to college. So
Mm,
yeah.
okay.
And I don't mean like a naked person, right? I mean like explicit,
Porn. Yes.
violent porn. This is not like it was before.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's damn near everywhere. Like, I feel like we are really in an over sexualized time. Like everything reverts back to sex. Like even like just, you can see pictures, like people are showing different pictures of random, like it could be a nature picture and it'll look like a vagina or it look like something, it's like
Yeah.
everything is just so hypersexualized.
Totally. And you know what's interesting you bring up? I was in actually this really small, primarily Christian town. It has a big Christian university. I walk by this little store, and I just say that because that's an interesting part of the story. I walk by the store about flowers. It is literally a florist shop, okay? And it had a book, a big book in the window that said flower porn. And I'm just like, that is a way that porn is normalized, right? Like, oh, it's just flower porn, if food porn, like whatever, right? But
Yes,
that's an interesting thing to think about because it's trying to normalize it so much so that like it's no big deal, right? It's just no big deal. And that's I would say in the 2010s kind of how it was viewed. Like, yeah, it's everywhere, but it's no big deal. Well, now we have enough data to say, actually, no, it's ruining people's
is
lives,
it?
and here's how.
Yes.
And I don't know if you ever heard of him. I really like this guy. I follow a guy named Joshua Broome,
Mhm.
Broome, and parents can look him up. He was a big porn star, like one porn star of the year. And he talks about his experience. He left that industry. He talks about it. And it is a cruel, evil place. I mean, the whole point is to
Mm.
use people. So they don't care about people, right? And he had standards, he had boundaries even in that industry of what he didn't want to do. Well, he did all of them. Okay. Because that's what you're on drugs. You use drugs, you drink a lot, you party a lot, like it's all to escape. And I feel like some little boys might look at porn and think, wow, I want to be like that guy. Like he's having sex with
Mhm.
all these girls and he's doing all this. No, he hates his life. He hates it. What's curious is why. And so I also follow people who have left the porn industry and really have exposed it for what it is. And it's fascinating. It's fascinating, but it's very sad. So the whole idea of like even that flower porn book, I was like, please, like that is gross. Like, come
I
on. Like, why
know.
can't it just say flowers?
Yeah,
But if you
no.
have a kid who can read and then they read that, they're going to probably think, Mom, what's that about? Right. And then that's another opportunity for you to say, they are trying to make it seem like it's just something fun to look at with all of these pictures, but porn is not just something fun to look at. It hurts people. And so like having a conversation about why do they even call it that? Like I think that that's silly or I think that's foolish and here's why is really just a good spot to really talk to your kid. And if you don't know how to respond, there's always the option to say, you know what, that's a good question. Let's talk about that later. And really dig into your thoughts about your response to that question, and then get back to them. That's okay too.
Indeed. Like even with the commercials, I went on a date last year with a guy and the first thing that I hear when I get in his car is size does matter. And I'm like, like size does matter, and you know, all this stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I mean, I felt bad for guys like having to hear that, and you know, them knowing or like thinking that that's what a woman has, you know, like if you don't have something that's really big and whatever, it's not going to be pleasing to a woman. I don't. It's just so much. It's just so much in this world that is. I don't even know where to
Yeah.
start. I don't
I
know.
know, I know. But you start somewhere, right? You start
Yes.
somewhere. Yeah. Basic conversations about the body, dating, asking what they think about a movie or TV show. You know, if your kids have sleepovers, ask them, I'm concerned about something and I just want you to be honest with me. Have you ever seen something that freaked you out or made you really curious at a sleepover? Have you ever seen anything with naked people? And you can tell me, like, it's okay. I'm not going to be mad at you. I just want to know. And that can be your bridge to start talking about porn and say, I need you to know that if you've seen that, if you're watching that, like this is not a realistic picture of sex. And this is really
Uh,
violent towards women and men. And here's why. There's a company called Fight the New Drug. They produce research on this topic, but being able to have those talks with kids so that they are aware of what they're ingesting essentially. I had this phrase that was taught to me in public health when I was studying uh, in grad school and undergrad, and it was what you consume, you become. And it
mm,
was primarily about food, I think, but shoot, what you consume, you become, right? And so
mhm.
we have to be really aware of what our kids are ingesting and like
Yes,
how from the culture, the world, their friends, whatever, and how that's impacting them.
indeed, indeed. It's like we gotta have the tough talks. I appreciate everything that you created because, like I said, if nothing else, you give directives of what it is you can be discussing or what it is you should be discussing. And like you said, parents could sit down and watch these videos and probably be surprised about the things that they learn too. Like, you know, many of us don't even examine our body parts until well into our 20s and 30s, speaking on personal experience. Like, you know, it's like you don't even get to looking around for real or feeling around and knowing yourself alone
Yeah.
until it's late because of what's attached with it. And it's I feel like it's a natural thing for us to be attracted or to, you know, have those feelings towards other individuals in that manner. It's just how do we go about this in a healthy manner? How do we
Mhm.
do this in a healthy manner?
Right. Exactly.
Yes. So, okay, look, let's step away from the sex talk for a minute. How do you self-care, Kristen, and all this sex that you're sitting around talking to these kids about? How do you make sure you are replenished and healthy and your best
Mhm.
self to be able to present this information in the best of your abilities? How do you do this?
But I like that. I have a really good relationship with my husband, like really good. And we talk about everything. And I
Oh,
honestly feel like we were married like 8 or 9 years before we had some hard stuff happen in our life and we really just had to face like, you know what? We have started to be ships in the night kind of thing, roommates, and that's not okay. And so we just reconnected then and really went at it. And we both got into counseling, and which was amazing. And so that has been really healthy since then. So that is self care for me. I have cats that I enjoy, so there's that. I have two. I feel bad now about the order, but I have two daughters. Don't tell them it came after the cats. It's not how I meant it. I have two girls who do bring me a lot of joy.
nice.
And honestly, like work is my passion. You're right that we have to self care even in the midst of that because I do get a lot of energy from what I do, and that's why
I
I know I'm
know it.
supposed to be doing it. Yeah. So.
Indeed, indeed. Before I let you go, and I don't want to let you go, but before I let you go, what are three things you want parents to leave this conversation with? If you don't hear anything else, hear this and take this with you.
Sure. One is to start today, like literally today. Use opportunities around you to do that. Like I mentioned earlier, whether it's music, a TV show, a movie, asking about sleepovers they've had. They have friends who are dating. They have access to phones. Ask them about it and start to walk into that uncomfortable space and maybe even recognize with them, I've never asked you this before, but I really care about you, so I want to. Or I never had these conversations, but I know they're important. Can we have them? I'd like to start with you. So do that, like start. basically, right? And use opportunities around you, acknowledge the elephant in the room if you've never had them before. Number two would be to say that I guess on the tail end of what we were just discussing, like porn is the biggest sex educator. It will impact your kids, most likely. It will impact how they view women and men. And so starting to have those conversations if you're married, like with your spouse, and how porn has impacted them and how it's impacting you guys now. And then how can we talk about this with our kids? Like, how can we partner
Mhm.
together to talk about this? What are our views on it? Like, what do we agree on or disagree on, etc. So having conversations with your partner first about that, and then thinking about and considering, praying about, journaling about, how you can talk to your kids. And then the third thing is don't be afraid of this conversation. Like, if I'm
Mhm.
giving three tips that relate to sex ed, don't be afraid of this. It's an opportunity. It's not just a challenge. It's an opportunity to get to know your kid, to engage in their life, to give your wisdom, to really impact them. I mean, sex is extremely impactful, and sexuality and identity, all of it. And so to speak into that area of their life is so amazing, but it's an opportunity.
Yes, thank you for that. Where do we find Sex Ed Reclaim?
Sexedreclaimed.com. So website, that's where everything is. I have samples on there for people. I have a free ebook actually on porn. I have books I recommend, etc. All my curriculum is on there. And then I also have an Instagram and TikTok and Facebook under Sex Ed Reclaimed as well.
Nice. Thank you, Kristen. Thank you for creating this. Thank you for following and honing in on your passion and making it so that everyone is able to have these tough talks or not so tough because they don't have to be tough. They don't have to
Yeah.
be. We just got to get through our stuff, our personal stuff. And that may take healing on our part, like, we grow because it wasn't I was reflecting. I know we're supposed to be ending, but I was reflecting on what she said earlier as far as like, what does a healthy relationship look like? Why do you like this person relationship? And I just think about the relationships that I saw modeled growing up, and I didn't have healthy relationships modeled growing up.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
in that sense, it definitely did more harm than good. And and but in reflection, I'm able to grow from it because I know that it was not a healthy relationship or were not healthy relationships with an S. All the adults in my life, like I don't know what they were doing, but like just understanding.
100%. Yeah.
Yes, yes, that's a big deal. Because we don't know what we don't know. We really don't.
Exactly. And even if you didn't have that experience, you came from this wonderful family, there's still stuff you learned that probably wasn't okay. Like
Mhm.
whether it was communication styles or some male, female roles, like something, there's still something that you can say, you know what? Actually, I don't really want that. I don't want to do that anymore. I always encourage adults to do that. I'm glad you brought that up, even though we are ending. Like
All
you
right.
have to look first. What was my sex ed experience? What did I
Yes,
learn about gender roles or dating or marriage? What was good about that and what wasn't? And
yes,
some people are
yes.
like, I learned nothing. Okay, but by learning nothing, you learned what? Not to talk
Right?
about it, right? And so you really got to process that a bit. And sometimes you need a counselor to process that, and that's okay.
Yes, yes, that is okay. But like it's okay, families, because if you can't have the tough talks, then by all means, Kristen has created a program that will allow you to initiate those talks, educate you and your child, and grow from it and work to build a healthy conversation around something that can be healthy. Like sex is a healthy thing. Like your children wouldn't be here without it. So that's a way to
Mhm.
look at it. Like we all have to come from that. So understand that it doesn't have to be something bad or it hasn't been seen as something so, no, I don't want to talk about that. Like it's okay, have them and don't underestimate the things that your children know. Like I've told y'all this from the beginning, from season one. I don't even know seasons, but it's like from the beginning. Talk to your kids, talk to your kids, talk to your kids, talk to your kid, and make it a safe space for them to talk to you in return. Okay. But always and forever, homeschool your kids.